After using Apple's beautiful new studio displays, I was a little skeptical of this 5K ASUS Pro Art display. At first, the studio display was just so well built and elegant, and this just looked like another monitor. But over the course of an entire week with it, it won me over with a really nice color range, some great functionality, and a much friendlier price tag.
This is Brad. He likes to review the tech. He also likes to draw. And this here is his theme song.
Even though I tested both the new Studio Display and the higher-end Studio Display XDR, I'm going to be comparing this ASUS Pro Art to the standard Studio Display because spec-wise, that's what it's more in line with. Since the XDR is using a mini LCD display and the standard Studio Display is using a wide color range LED, just like the ASUS does, it's more of an apples to apples comparison. Now, ASUS does have some mini LED displays, just not at this 5K size, which is perfect for Macs. So why is that 5K spec so appealing to Mac users? Because I test a lot of 4K drawing tablets and I never thought, this 4K looks bad. But once you see macOS on a 5K display and how crisp it can be and then bouncing back to a 4K display, it's one of those things that you can't unsee. So the default scaling on Macs is 1440p or 2560 pixels by 1440 pixels. So when you double that, it's 5K, 5120 pixels by 2880 pixels. So if you use a slightly lower scaled monitor like a standard 4K display, it's not pixel perfect. So text, icons, interface elements, they ended up shrinking the pixels a little bit just to get them to fit. It's barely noticeable, but they look less crisp. Now on PCs, on Windows, it's not nearly as important, which is why most PC folks are fine with going with the less expensive 4K displays that are out there. Although this 5K display does look really good on a PC too. Since I am a Mac and a PC guy, I did play around with that. So let's take a look at the hardware that we're dealing with here. There is a good selection of ports along the back. I can connect via a USB Type-C, HDMI, or even a display port. And from the settings buttons along the front, I can select which input I want to use, making it fairly easy to toggle between my PC and my Mac. Something that was considerably harder, if not impossible, on the Studio Display. Actually, I never got my PC to work on my Studio Display. It should have. It has Thunderbolt in it. I just didn't invest enough time to troubleshoot it. Now this ASUS comes with a matte textured screen. Now I did not go for the $300 extra nano texture glass option on the Studio Display because it was $300. I will admit, I fell into the trap that a lot of consumers do when they look at two displays, one being glossy and one being matte, and saying, wow, the glossy one looks better, it just pops more. I ended up asking Art Is Right, who I interviewed last week about monitors and colors, why is it that so many creative monitors are matte displays?
The problem with glossy display I find in general for creative workflow is that it tends to lie to us. Flattering tends to be the term that I like to use on that. And it makes your picture and your edit look flattering. So a lot of times, from my perspective as a photographer, I see people work all the time. What do? They take it about 60%, 70% of the way there, because it looks great on their display, and then they just stop editing because they're like, this looks fantastic. Not that a matted or a nano texture etching display is lying to you, it's just telling you exactly like how your work could be looking on the lowest common denominator. So what that's telling you is that if you can edit your picture and make it pop on a nano texture on a matte display, take that to any glossy display out there, your picture is going to look fantastic.
I had never really thought about it before, but that has been my experience using matte displays on drawing tablets. So the colors here really do look good on this. I'm not a hardcore color guy. That's why I ended up talking to Art to kind of learn more about this stuff. I look for consistency between displays more than super accurate color in my work. I just don't like looking at my laptop screen and then seeing a completely different range of blues or reds blowing out on my secondary monitor, or noticing that the contrast is too strong on one and not enough on the other. I was pleasantly surprised here just by plugging this in, just without any calibration, how close it matched the natural colors of my Mac. Now, I did notice that it was pushing more into the reds, like if I had a white background, like if I was typing something up on a web page or something like that, it pushed more into that red. I ended up using this directly next to a BenQ 5K display all week, so I was using both at the same time. Review coming for the BenQ in a few days here, by the way. Subscribe down below so you don't miss it. And I was pleasantly surprised by how both of those matched up with my MacBook screen. I did end up grabbing a color calibrator just to test it out, to pump up some of that color intensity a tiny bit, and to adjust that red. I could have probably probably have done it. Actually, at first I did do it just manually and it was fine, but I wanted to see how well the color calibrator would do it out of the box, and it did. Now with a 2-monitor setup like this, the bezels do matter, and the edges of the studio display are a lot wider than these two displays. That did bug me at times. Having less space between those monitors is a nice luxury, and something I liked using these 2 monitors. I should probably hit you up with the specs. Before I do, shout out to the sponsor, me. If you've ever been interested in art as a hobby and thought, man, it would be kind of cool to sign up for like a drawing class and go there and take lessons, I got just the thing for you. It's bradsartschool.com, where I have a Learn to Draw in 60 Days course. Go at your own speed. New lesson every day, and if you'd like to learn more, check out the link down below in the description, and don't forget to use the code MONITORMONTH at checkout to save a little money. Okay, we were talking specs. You folks need some numbers. Now, apart from the 5K display, we have a 60 Hz refresh rate. We have 500 nits of brightness compared to Apple's 600. We have 99% DCI-P3 color and 95% Adobe RGB for you photographers and print designers out there. You can get power delivery to your MacBook if you connect it via USB Type-C, and there are 3 USB Type A ports and an extra USB Type C port here, and a headphone jack and some speakers, because the speakers here are not that good. You're probably going to want to bring your own. These don't get very loud and they sound very tinny. This was one of those areas where the studio display speakers are so good that jumping back over to this, I was like, oof, yeah, this is rough. There are 2 specs on this list that will raise some eyebrows. The first is a lot of folks nowadays are looking for OLEDs. That's just what they want. And I totally get that. Most monitors that are going for color accuracy aren't necessarily OLED yet, but I think we are getting closer. That's another thing I talked to Art is right about. Why aren't there more OLED creative displays out there, and when should we expect to see them? That was a great conversation.
I feel that in the next few years, we're probably going to get OLED technology where it's going to be there. I don't think it's quite there just yet. And especially if you think about, like, for a 27-inch or 32-inch super high resolution, it takes a lot for the manufacturers, for the fabricators, to really fab those panels.
The second thing that people are going to look at here is that 60 hertz. This one actually bumps me out because I do use my computer for work and for gaming. So a higher refresh rate would have been nice. It's surprisingly hard to find a high refresh 5K display out there right now. Crazy enough, the only one that I found was also made by ASUS. It wasn't hard to find. They actually offered to send me that one. I was like, nah, send me the creative display instead. I was more interested in the color accuracy and that sort of thing than the refresh rate. That's why I went this direction. So in my studio display reviews, I talked about that stand, the $400 optional stand for the studio display. I called it over and engineered because it is. It is super cool though. I love playing with it, but it was kind of a novelty. The ProArt stand is the exact opposite. It's reaching for function over form. It's a heavy metal base that's really firmly anchors this thing to your desk. It is not going anywhere. The stem is made of plastic and metal. It's a height adjustable mechanism in there so you can move this up and down pretty easily. Is it as elegant as Apple? No, it's nowhere near as elegant, but it's fine. It gets the job done. It also articulates in more ways than Apple's does. Apple's lets you tilt it backwards and forwards, but this one also lets you tilt it side to side. You can also spin it around into portrait mode and use it that way. Now, the one thing I wish it had when you were turning it like into that portrait mode was some kind of like click point or some way to feel it snapping into place. It freely moves. So when I had it in portrait and then would move it back to landscape, I was like, is it level? Is it a little off? And I kept readjusting it. Even if it was just subtle, if there's just some way to feel it snapping into place, I could say, stop obsessing over the angle, Brad, and get back to work. I also wish that the cord space they have here in the stand was a bit higher, because the way it's set now, you can pretty much see the cords most of the time when you're using it. Not a big deal, but they could be better hidden. Now, you've probably seen me complain about this before on drawing tablets, and it's something that, in general, display manufacturers have been doing a better job of in recent years, and that is the on-screen controls for adjusting things like brightness and contrast and color. I like what ASUS is doing here. It's really easy to navigate this menu. It does add a lot of physical buttons to the front of the display itself. Some people aren't going to like that. I do like a more simple, elegant design myself. However, since I get so frustrated by these on-screen displays, I don't mind a few buttons here and there just to make that job easier, and it does. There are a ton of options here, more than just brightness and contrast, lots of color modes and things like that. Now, I mentioned in my Apple review that the Studio Display is more than just a monitor. It's basically turning your MacBook or your Mac Mini into an iMac. This ProArt display is just a display. That's what it does, and that's what it does well. But the Studio Display excels at those other things. The FaceTime camera, really good. The speakers, amazing. It just so seamlessly fits in the Mac ecosystem. If you don't need those things, then this ProArt display makes a lot of sense. The other thing I need to talk about is build quality. I mentioned this at the top, and this was the one area that disappointed me. The first impression it left wasn't very good. And that's because I had been using the Apple Studio Display and the Studio Display XDR for about a week, and then I came and I unboxed this, and just the difference is night and day. Apple has this brushed aluminum versus the ProArt's plastic body. Apple's edge-to-edge front glass versus the plastic enclosure along the front of this screen. The sleekness of Apple's height adjustable stand versus the way this one just kind of works fine. These are the first things you notice when you use a product, and this was definitely amplified by the fact that I had just come from these Apple Studio displays. I talked about this before in my videos. I am a design snob. Nice to meet you. A beautifully designed product is my absolute weakness. And quantifying design in a YouTube video, very hard to do. Whenever you try, you get yelled at in the comments. It's great fun. You should try it. And I know a lot of people just don't care. As long as you get the specs you're looking for, you're good to go. I do not mind paying a premium for good design. Now, how much of a premium depends. Apple gets a little crazy in that regard. I did expect more here with the ProArt though, because I have paid more for ProArt products in the past. I think of ASUS's ProArt line as being like a step above in terms of build quality over your normal off-the-shelf computer company. Some of the ProArt laptops are amazing. The ProArt PX13 is the best Windows laptop I have ever tested. It has this brushed black aluminum that somehow magically does not collect fingerprints. It's got a 360-degree hinge that is just absolutely perfect. It's also one of the only 2 Windows laptops I have ever used where I didn't hate the trackpad. It also has this little capacitive touch scroll wheel on the trackpad. It's just, it's so good. I paid more for the ProArt GPU because it's such a great looking GPU, and I feel like so many of the other ones are just big, bulky, RGB ladled plastic. Plastic and metal, actually. My if price was no object computer uses the ProArt GPU as part of the case. Someone designed a $600 matte black aluminum case just to work with one specific GPU because this GPU looks so cool. And so when I think of the ProArt brand, I do tend to think about that kind of quality. Now, fortunately for me, the second impression that this display left was so much better. Once I got it set up and got to work, the quality of the screen, the vibrance of the colors, and some of those nice usability features really started to sink in and win me over. And when I think about how my office is laid out here, once I had the display set up and plugged in, put at the right angle, I never touch it again. I never interface with it again. The only thing that matters is the screen, and in that regard, I think ASUS has done a killer job. So if I take price out of the equation and I'm choosing between the Studio Display and this ProArt display, I'm still taking the Studio Display. But at almost half the price, you really can't take price out of the equation. And to get the price this low, you have to cut some corners, and I understand that. The ones you cut are the brushed aluminum, the funky over-engineered stand. And they decided to focus on the parts that people care about the most with the display, which is the panel itself. And there, they did a good job. What do you think about this display? Is this something you would get for your Mac? Let me know down below in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you in a couple of days.